Jordan Peterson has said on our stage many times on the Pangburn stage that he acts as though God exists. My question to both of you is that an anti-scientific act to act as God exists?
I would give it a split decision. Right? So to say that, and I've read and I've written on Jordan Peterson on his attempt to solve the fact-value dichotomy. In philosophical terms, he is coming out of a pragmatic tradition. And what pragmatism philosophically wants to say is we don't need to raise questions of truth. Instead, all we have to do is ask whether a given set of ideas or practices work. That's the explicit philosophical. And so then the claim is that religions work. Right? They provide certain psychological values, and then more recently he said that they provide certain social values, social glue, and so forth. So they work in that sense. But he is explicitly, in making those kinds of claims, saying that he's not going to try to prove the truth of any religion. So I would say science is interested in what works. It wants to have ideas that when you put them into practice enable us to live better lives. But at the same time, science is also interested in truth, and the classically robust scientific claim is if you get the truth, you get it worked out, or something close to the truth, that's going to work. And that if you are diverging from the truth, it's not going to work. So I think a healthy philosophy of science is going to integrate the concepts of truth. So it needs to have a robust epistemology that works those out with a value theory about what works. That's the ideal. And what Jordan Peterson is doing is introducing a wedge between those two. And I think that's, I know where he's coming from, but I think that's a mistake.
Well, yeah, okay. As you know, I've talked to Jordan a number of times publicly as well as a lot privately. And the problem, of course, is it's a meaningless statement because he doesn't define what God is. Like many statements that, unfortunately, I think Jordan makes, and when I confront him with them, he agrees. I've never seen him not back off. So I act as if God exists. Well, fine. What does God mean? And if so, you can define it any bunch of ways, and then you could say, well, then that's rational. So I think it's ultimately meaningless. My favorite line from the old Dick Van Dyke Show is when Carl Reiner used to say, what is on the surface seems vague is in reality meaningless. And I keep saying that to Jordan. But I do think that ultimately this notion that it works, the statement that somehow religion does work is also ultimately flawed. It works it does provide people comfort. It produces a world of violence, hate, and bigotry and everything else. So it manifestly doesn't work. If we could find a way to provide people with comfort and community and I think science can, because science defines our humanity. Science is based on a universal humanity, that we all have the same genetic structures and biological systems. So I think science could provide a better basis. But this claim that somehow religion works is, look at human history. It's the exact opposite. It works very badly.
All right.
Can I follow up?
Quick follow-up. Yep.
I think this then goes back to the distinction between weak science and anti-science. And whether religion works depends on whether it's weak or whether it's anti. The antis don't work, the weaks do. Let me try to give an explanation for that. If your approach to religion is an empirical approach, and you're just focusing on the social issues, we need to get along with each other in the schoolyard, and I learn I can't take your toys whenever I want. And we need to be honest with each other, otherwise we're not going to be friends, people aren't going to trust me, girls won't want to go out with me. So I've got a worked out set of moral beliefs that are empirically based about what enables me to flourish and us to flourish in the
That are
world.
empirically based.
As I become more mature, I then come to believe that the best explanation for that is that principles of honesty and not stealing and so forth come from a supernatural being. That's not true, but it still works. Right? And the empirical part works.
Well, that sounds
What's
fine,
not
but I
going-
don't think it's. I don't think it's true. I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think that next step ever happens.
because-
the
no.
ascribing it to God inevitably produces a series of beliefs that aren't moral, that aren't ethical, that aren't consistent, that aren't anything.
No, if that's as far as your argument goes, and you get people to believe that, if they believe in a God who's watching over you, say, so you're not going to steal and so forth, that does work to make people more honest, less stealing, more social cooperative. So there are actual values that come out of a false theory. It's like a placebo effect.
Well, unless
of
that
the-
God tells you
of the religion.
you
Right.
shouldn't steal unless it's a different group. You
No.
shouldn't kill unless it's a different group. You shouldn't kill. I mean, it always has just become so malleable that that fundamental moral basis just dissolves when you actually look at the world's religion.